Hey devs, welcome back to this playlist, and in this video we're going to add the logic to control our character. So based on the keyboard inputs it can run left, right and do other stuff. One important thing before writing such logic is to break down and write the actual states we want for this character to be in, and that will help us also to write the logic. If you are a more advanced developer, you may keep that all in mind, but it's always good to write it down somewhere so you don't lose your thoughts, and you follow some kind of guidelines. Or maybe you can have something similar from the game designer, and then you will follow the guidelines. So in this example, we know that our hero can have idle state, move left or right, jump, also falling state, and it can turn while it is falling. It can turn left and right. So I designed this small chart to represent the states, and also I added this image to show the controls of the keyboard. So it's a kind of a visual aid for us so we know better what we are going to work on. So the first thing, of course, is idle state. The idle state is the basic state, the base and the first state we start from. So whenever we click right, we go to run right state, and from that, if we release the right button, it can go to idle. The same for left side, so it can switch between those states. Also, the up key will run this jump animation. So in here, in jump state, when we see that jump animation playing, we can click any of these buttons, but nothing will happen. So this state will not accept any inputs. And then when jump animation is finished, we will play the next one, which is fall animation. So then it will give us a feeling that the character jumps, and after doing some squats, in the air, it will start falling. And while we are in a fall state, we can click right or left buttons, and then we can go to turn left and turn right states. First, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add an object that holds the information about all of the keys we will use. So with left, right, and I will use a space for up, but you can use an up arrow key. Then I will add this factory. Basically, I will use that to create my functions that will validate data. We will see that later on. Next thing, I will create an array to keep all my keys I clicked. Each time I click one of the buttons on the keyboard, and I will keep those codes of the buttons I clicked in this array so I can check it later on. Next thing, I created two functions that will validate things for me. Next thing, what I am going to do, I am going to add an event listener to listen to key down event, and the event itself has a code that represents the code of the key I pressed on my keyboard, and we will check if the key is not valid. Means if I click tab or shift or something else, we will do nothing, because those keys are not the valid ones. Those buttons are not the valid ones. And also I will check whether I already clicked that or not. So if it's a valid key and I didn't click that before, I will push it into clicked keys so I can keep track of that later on. And then I create this basic switch statement, and probably most of you already did that before. So because it's really simple logic, it's good to have that thing in your project when you do something like that, when you have a character or a car or something else that has different actions based on different inputs. So it's perfect to have this construction. And then I populate that with methods. If I save that and go to the browser, I have my hero, which is in idle state by default, and then I click right or left and I can hit space and it will do stuff. But we have, of course, one issue: we don't handle key up events, but so far it works. You can see that our hero can switch the animations. After that, it will be good to add event listener to listen key up event. So we will do the similar check, but in this case it's reversed. So we check if we already have this key code inside of the key clicked. So that means if I click right arrow, and when I release the right arrow, I will check whether I clicked that before, and I will do my logic after that check. Then I add switch statement that looks the same way as we did it for key down, but in this case I will just put the idle for all of these cases. Let's go to a browser now and check it. If I click the space bar and I hold it, you see that it has the animation of jumping, but the issue of course is that when I release the space bar it breaks the animation. But other things work. I go left and right, and when I release buttons it goes back to idle state. Okay, let's fix the issue with jumping state because it's a little bit sophisticated. So in this slide I mentioned that when I click a spacebar I go into jump state and no inputs should be handled, and then it should go in a false state. Let's write code for that. To cover the case with jumping, what I need to do, I need to add an extra variable, the boolean that will represent the state, and we use that boolean to specify whether the character is jumping. I will add a callback to the jump method because jump method receives the callback to fire when the jump animation is finished. So after that I will switch to a fall animation, and I will specify that now we are jumping if we click spacebar. Now you see that we can run left or right, but I need to turn left and right when I'm jumping. So for that I will add the if statements inside of each cases, and when we are jumping we need to turn left or right, and the same for other case. Also we should add it to a key up event as well. So in here I will put the false when the key up is released, and I will add these if statements to specify that we can go into idle only when we are not jumping. Okay, let's save it and see what we have in the browser. I will refresh it, and I can go right and release them, the button, and left as well. I can click the space bar and I start falling. We see that it doesn't work completely. First thing what I need to do is to remove this is jumping from key up that broke all the things before. So now if I refresh it and I do a jump, you see it jumps and then starts falling, and then I can turn left and right. But you see that our code becomes more error prone. We have more states to address. Also, one thing that we need to do is handle this false state. So for that I will add a variable is falling to represent whether we are falling or not. Also I need to add an if statement and prevent the jumping again if I'm already in a jump state. So if I hit the space bar a few times in a row, it shouldn't jump twice unless your game design requires that feature. Then what I'm going to do, you see that we're jumping, and after that we're going to fall state, but I need to add the boolean here and say that we're now falling. Obviously the hero cannot fall endlessly, and we need something to know where the fall finishes. So if I had a physics system, I would maybe check if a hero collides with a horizontal plane, you know, whether it collides the ground, and then I can exit this state. But for this video I don't have it, but it's not a big problem, because the purpose, of course, to discuss the finite state machine and how we can rewrite this code. Okay, let's add the logic. I will add some placeholder things, and I will just count the loop times, so I can just listen to an event and see if the animation of hero falling looped 4 times, I go back to idle. Okay, now as we have this falling variable, I need to restrict other states, so I don't need to do anything except turning when I'm in a jump or is falling state, you know. The same for a key up event. So in a key up I will go to idle only if I'm not jumping and not falling. Okay, let's save it and go to the browser and see what we have. I can go right, left, I can jump, and then I can turn while I'm falling, and then it will go to idle state by itself when it stopped falling. Again, if I had a ground, I would probably check whether we hit the ground to stop the falling state. Alright, this is the logic, and you can see that we needed to add more Boolean variables to keep more information about the states, and we use those Booleans to see whether we can do some extra actions or to branch actions depending on the state. So far it looks kind of bearable. We can manage this kind of code, but imagine if you have more states and you can attack while you're jumping, or while you're falling, or you can slide when you run. So this code will quickly come out of hand. So in next video lesson we will add a basic state machine and see how it works, and after that we will split this logic into states and do the same thing but utilizing the state machine.